well, thank you. So I'm wondering how long you've been in the military for?
23 years.
All right. What made you want to go into the military?
I was originally going to come into the Army to do Army band. So band geek, yeah, I know.
Ah.
Y'all laugh. Go ahead, laugh it up now. Came in, they didn't have the position I was looking for, so the next thing I knew I wanted to do was be a law enforcement official, or a cop when I got into the civilian sector, so I was like, hey, might as well do it in the Army. So went into the Army as a military policeman.
All right. So can you maybe touch on an experience that you had that might have affected you in either a negative or positive way? Just something that I guess really you remember from your work or that like stuck with you
Yeah,
all the
as
time?
law enforcement you deal with a lot of stuff. So 1993, December, I was just getting into military police investigations, which is detective for the Army. Started in September, and in December, Fort Lewis had its largest family murder ever. So it was an entire family that was killed. So not a very nice thing for the most part. It was a father, 3 little boys who were all killed. So it was eye-opening to what I wanted to do, if I really wanted to do it for the rest of my life. It was one of those things that it's either going to make or break you. So fortunately it made me, and I think if it was the other way I probably would have gotten out the next year when I was scheduled to get out. So, but it was one of those things where you really dig into it, start studying what makes a person do what a person does, whether it's good or bad. And yeah, it was just 3 soldiers who thought one guy had said something about them and they got in trouble for it, so they wanted revenge and they went and killed his family. So, yeah, unless you want me to get into more detail, the graphics of it, I could.
Oh, that's okay.
I
You
didn't
don't
think
have to.
Good. So, and,
Okay.
so it was one of those things where it goes, well, why does this person do this? You know, so, and then it just got me into what I wanted to do. You know, I had only done 2 years of college by that time, and then I went into the Army. I was like, yeah, I'll make the Army my life. And then it was like, well, no, I really want to know why, what makes this person tick. So it ended up having me go back to school, studied psychology, abnormal psychology, and then ended up getting into forensic pathology, and then I ended up being a criminal investigator, and then after that it was, you know, getting into profiling. So it was quite...
Very interesting.
It was, yeah. So now I know, well, I'm supposed to know what makes a person tick, but you never know. You know, each situation dictates what you're going to do based on what your intelligence, knowledge is of things. So,
Definitely.
yeah.
So how long did you do that for? Or are you still doing
Still
that?
do that.
Okay.
So that is what made me want to get into that career field. You know, it could have been a regular MP for the rest of my career, you know, just pulling people over, giving them tickets. But that's what really made me want to get into military police investigations and finally criminal investigations and profiling.
All right. So do you have any, I guess, methods or like people in your life that help you cope with what you're dealing with?
Yeah. No. Coping mechanisms, they teach you as much as they can. You know, there's people you try to talk to, I should say, you know, and then you know when you give them too much information. So you learn your own coping mechanisms. Mine were, you know, talking it out to myself. You can't forget it because you don't. You know, there's last week, 2 weeks, when, you know, Kat told me that I was going to be doing this, I was thinking, you know, what one situation really caused me to, you know, want to go the course I did. And then you start thinking about that, and it brings all those memories back and stuff, and then you have dreams about them and all that stuff. So it never really goes away. The coping mechanisms are what you make of them. I suggest to people to go and see, you know, psychiatrists or, you know, just talking to your buddies is the best way to do it. There was 3 of us investigators who went into that situation, you know, and we still talk about it to this day.
All right. So you feel that just talking amongst your,
Absolutely. Your
your colleagues and
peers.
stuff
Absolutely.
has helped you?
Mhm.
All right.
Well, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
To an extent.
to an extent,
Okay.
correct.
All right. Let me see. So has being in the military and doing this kind of work, has it affected your family or the people around you in any
What
any
family?
way?
Let's start with what family.
Oh, okay.
No, it does. You know, my ex-wife, we were both military police at the time. I ended up going into the Rangers and everything. So the unit that we were both in, me being in the Rangers at the time and her being an MP, we were both deployed numerous times. You know, this was during Somalia, can't think of it, Bosnia, and when Iraq was starting up again in 1994. So it was to the point where it was pretty bad, where I was coming home from deployment and she was just ramping up to go on deployment. So it ended up that out of the 5 years I was physically married, we were only physically together 10 months out of those 5 years. So yeah, it makes a huge difference on your life.
Wow. Do you have any kids?
Yes, one
All
10-year-old son.
And does he know what you do exactly, or have you talked to him about it at all? Or?
He knows that Daddy's in the Army. He knows that I work here. But he's not to the point or the level that I think we could have an actual conversation on it.
Yeah.
You know, he just knows that I put the green pickle suit on every now and then, go play Army, come back home. So, yeah.
Right.
But it'll get to the point where, you know, he'll be like, hey, what do you actually do in the Army? And I'll be able to actually tell him what I do.
Definitely. Let's see. Any other interesting stories you would like to share with us?
You know, you've got yeah, you've got funny stories where you hear. Well, it starts out as a pretty scary story. You hear 2 MPs, the call's going out to them, they're not responding. Say like, oh my God, what happened to them? You know, the radio's been dead for like 2 hours, and then it turns out to be a funny story because they're both in the backseat of one military police vehicle, both naked, you know, in their police cars. So the doors in the back lock. Knuckleheads forgot to take the keys with them, and they lock themselves with all their clothes outside the vehicle. So we come up on the vehicles with 2 naked soldiers. So you got funny stories like you got funny stories like that, and then you know you got stories like the one I told you. You've got stories of fratricide, suicides, all those things. So you know, another story was we had Army Rangers who were out in a training area, and they came across a tree, and they thought it was a dummy that was hanging there, but it was actually another soldier who had hung himself. So had they actually responded or stopped and assisted, the soldier was still alive by the time they went by him. You know, he was expiring, but he still could live. And by the time the MPs got out there, they thought he had already expired, died. And by the time they come down, he gasped a couple of times, and then they finally made the call to the ambulance, so he died en route to the hospital. So, you know, little things like that that you think about it and you go, you know, really? Yeah, just one decision could have saved another soldier.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Oh,
Allie.
no, go ahead. Yes.
So if you could go back in time, Mr. G, would you repeat your career, or would you go a different route, or would you be a civilian
Seriously,
instead?
I would love to
or...
have been a band geek. You
Oh,
know?
yeah.
You know, I gave up playing football my entire junior high and high school career just to be, you know, in the band, the drum major and everything like that. So, you know, I gave up a lot of things when I was in high school, planning on going to college to, you know, be in the band, and then to only find out that I couldn't do it in the Army, you know, so I think I would have done that. But do I harp on it? No, absolutely not, because, you know, my career became what it is because of those situations, whether I made them or not. So,
So
no,
kind
no-
almost.
do I have any regrets? None whatsoever. Who
So
knows?
almost like maybe like career kind of shifted because of those events.
Absolutely.
And it changed because
Yeah,
of what was happening.
totally changed. Yeah,
Mhm.
because my intent was to come into the Army, do my 4 years, get my college paid off, so I
Okay.
could go on, you know, become band teacher and all that. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's a big difference.
Yeah, totally. Thanks.
Next.
So I hear you, this is, I guess, kind of going in a different direction, but I hear that you've done some investigative work, like, or interrogation type
Yeah.
of deals.
So, as a criminal investigator, we have our different branches within that one field. So you can be a protective services guy, bodyguard work, which is what I did a lot of. My other specialty was homicide, suicide, child abuse, domestic violence. So I kind of got more involved with the worst stuff. And that was because, you know, how my career started out with that initial case that I had. Then you've got other guys who do regular investigations, money laundering, thefts, so on and so forth. So I wanted to get into the really deep stuff, post-bomb blast. So after a bomb blows up, you go through and inspect it, find out what type of, you know, bomb it was, like with the Boston Marathon and stuff, how they found out that it was,
Okay.
you know, the pressure cooker, stuff like that. You go back and try and find out all that stuff, finding out who did it and stuff. So I wanted to get into that stuff. Protective services was just because I was a bigger guy and it was easy to, you know, protect little people like yourself. Nothing against you guys. You know, and it's fun. The dignitaries that I've met, you know, Secretary of Defense Gates, Perry, Panetta, you know, working for those guys, and you see them on TV all the time, and you're like, I wonder what this person's really like, and then you get in the car with them, and they're like, hey, my name's, you know, Tom, Adam, and stuff like that. What's your name? John. Oh, hey, cool. You know, tell me about yourself. So they're really personal inside the vehicle. That's the good part of it. But then, like I said, I got into homicide, suicide. That was a little more
Dark.
not so nice, dark, yeah. Child abuse, domestic violence. You don't hear a lot about it in the military, but it's there. So just think of the military, Fort Lewis especially. It's considered the 10th largest city in Washington State. You know, so whatever happens on the outside happens on the inside, except we keep it really hush-hush for the most part. So, yeah, so my specialties were dark, but enlightening at the same time.
Definitely. Yes.
How did, when you first decided to be in the Army,
Mhm.
how did your family take it? Your parents, siblings, whatever?
They knew, ever since I was probably 10 or 11 years old, they knew I was going to go into the Army. Intentionally planned on going into the Air Force, being a pilot and everything like that. You know, just like every little boy
Yeah.
fantasizes, dreams about. So my brother had gone in, he went in when I was 14, you know, so it's one of those things, you've got your camaraderies, or not camaraderies, child, family, little battles. My brother was going to be in the Marines, yeah, so I was, you know, my brother played the accordion when I was 5 years old, so I had to go and play the accordion, you know, and that got me into music. Then he went in and wrestled, so I had to go and wrestle. So, you know, whatever he did, I had to do it better type thing. So that's why I went into, you know, the Army, because, you know, he did his 4 years, so I was like, oh, I got to do at least 5. You know, so here I am. You know, I ended up doing 16 years active duty and then the rest in the reserves like I am now. So 23 years later. And yeah, still enjoying it. I'll stop doing it when it's not fun anymore, as they say. So yeah, that's what made me want to go into the military. I guess that brotherly competition. So.
And because being in the real Army per se, in comparison to being here working with ROTC,
Mhm.
how has that changed? How is your experience here with ROTC? Because we can be a handful.
Yeah. Well, you're at, as an NCO, senior NCO as I am, my job is mentoring junior NCOs and everything like that. So coming in here, yeah, my job is as a civilian doing all the HR work, human resources stuff. But, you know, I see you guys and it's the perfect opportunity for me to mentor you guys as well. Because I've got so much knowledge, you know, that I can put on her anyway, not you guys. You know, that I can, you know, tell you about from my experiences and everything. So if I didn't, then I would feel, you know, not as... I get more out of that than what I do as what my actual job is supposed to be here. So the mentorship part is a big thing.
True.
Since she's behind the camera,
Well-
she's not asking any questions.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I figured Kat could chime in once in a while because she knows you better than I do. But, so did you ever have that kind of relationship when you were sort of starting out? Did you have a mentor when you were, I guess, going through your training? Yes, training or anything like that?
No. The only thing I really had to look up to was the type of NCO I didn't want to become. That's the early NCOs. You know, and we're talking right around the first 9/11 war. So all those unfortunate leadership folks that you had, you know, from 1990 back to 1975, we didn't have any wars going on. It was all the anticipation of the Cold War. You know, these guys weren't hard battled or hardened from battle. You know, they were just buying their time in the military. So these guys were, you know, they'd done their 20 years with never seen combat. You know, and here I am, and I get out of basic training and I go straight into combat. So they didn't have that seasoned, hardened combat training that, you know, someone like me, when I first came in, got stuck with like that. So I'm not saying they were bad people, it's just they didn't have that background that I had. So it was hard to, you know, you took the leadership from them. You know, you did what you were told, and Army's 101 there. But it was hard to look up to them, you know. So still going. I'm just thinking. My first strong mentor probably didn't come in until probably after I was in the Army 5 years, you know, and it was, you know, the guy that he was one of the guys that I walked in on that case with. He was my, you know, NCO, you know, so it was all fun and games until I started getting into that career field, and then, you know, he had gone through training that I wanted to go to, so it wasn't really mentoring, it was just like I saw his career progression and I wanted to follow that same career progression. So it was just following in his footsteps. That's how I had to learn.
All right.
I don't know, you kind of already answered the question.
All right.
Do you think you would have turned out differently if you had maybe had more guidance earlier on, or do you feel better because you were able to sort of figure it out by yourself?
You always learn better from having a mentor. Yeah, if you got to learn from your own mistakes, it's a learning event, but, you know, if somebody tells you, don't do this, you know, it's a lot easier, so I didn't have to go and, you know, learn it the hard way. Luckily, I didn't have a lot of issues. I wasn't, you know, a troubled military soldier or anything like that, so raised Catholic, you know, I knew, you know, the military was just like church. You know, you go to church, you sit, stand, kneel, all that stuff. The Army is you get up in the morning, you brush your teeth. It's very systematic, you know, so one led to the other, basically, you know. So, having a mentor would have been more beneficial.
Okay. Did you have any idea of what you might be seeing? I mean, I know they say, you know, you're going to be seeing suicides and all that stuff, but did you really know?
You know, when I came into the Army, I grew up on an island, you know, in Portugal until I was 8 years old. So I grew up raising pigs and goats and stuff like that. And, you know, then I grew up in Rhode Island, South Boston, where nothing happened. You know, so I was very, what's the word? Whitewashed of everything. I didn't see a lot of that. I didn't have a lot of cynicism in myself when I first came into the military, knowing that I'm going to see these type of things or anything like that. Then definitely, I came into the Army because of Desert Shield, 1990. You know, I wanted to come in because I knew we were ramping up to go to war and everything like that, so that was my intent. But did I actually think I was going to see war? You know, did I actually really think it through? No, absolutely not. You know, so when you get there, luckily it wasn't a hard-fought battle for us. You know, I didn't see a lot of stuff. You know, all my stuff that I saw was as an investigator. So, you know, it wasn't, you know, face-to-face hand combat type fighting. Luckily didn't see a lot of that. But yeah, my cynicism, made me wake up. It was a nice smack in the face.
Definitely. Do you have
Well,
anything?
we're already approaching 25-ish
Oh, we are?
minutes. Mhm.
Okay.
And so, Mr. G, if I guess is there anything else you'd just like to chime in about your career, about being in the military and how it's changed your life? Because obviously, I feel like it has.
Mm-hmm.
All these different events and all these different obstacles. Any last words on your career thus far?
It definitely didn't become what I wanted it to become, as I initially had planned out. But have I looked back and thought how, if I had been in the band, where I would have ended up compared to where I've ended up now, and what do I think which one would have been better? If you start thinking about that, you're not going to get anything out of it. So I just went with and said, you know, this is where God said I was supposed to go, and that's the way I went. So I'm I'm a fly by the seat type person, you know. So I'm happy where I'm at. You know, so yeah, that's all I can say. That's all I got to say about that.
That's that.
Forrest Gump.
That's the box of chocolate. Sweet. All right. Well, thanks so much, Mr. G. That was awesome.
You're welcome.
Thank you.